constraints around the amount of energy, oh, sorry, the amount of energy they're consuming, right? There are energy crisis happening all over the world. And companies also have this mandate or compliance requirements around reducing their emissions. So, sorry, I think there's somebody. Okay, okay. So one of the areas which, when we, number one thing in any product development is going and directly hearing what is the main problem that your customers are facing. Number one. Two, is this a problem which they want to spend money to solve? And number three, are they going to spend money on it now? Because at the end of the day, when you are looking at any product development, that's the key thing. So we realize that all these companies are facing these requirements. They have strong constraints in energy reduction. So we then came out with this product, which we call as Neo. No marketing on that, but it's a product that we decided to build. And the number one thing in any product development when you start building is to identify an anchor customer. So which is what we did. So we did go to a customer who was genuinely facing this problem and they really had to go fix it. And then we helped build this product along with this customer. It was for the broader market, but then we had an anchor customer which we used to build it. And now we then are taking it to different markets, right? So this was a product which customers can adopt, and it can compare how much energy they're consuming across manufacturing facilities, across their buildings, across data centers, no matter what it is. It can tell them which is the best performing one, which is the worst performing one, so they can optimize it, and that way they can help reduce their energy consumption as well. So that is a quick overview, but I think any questions people have around how to approach a problem or monetize it or do it in a phased manner, I can help answer that.
That's fantastic. And it actually brings me to another question, which, you mentioned how do you kind of meet a customer's direct needs? And then also that a big part of your job is understanding what that customer really does desire. There is this kind of debate around sustainability of to what extent does the market really desire sustainability? Or is it something that they just kind of say, but are they really willing to pay more money for it or kind of put dollar on the line? What's your view on that? Like, do you think that there is a real need in the market for that sustainability and a place for the market there?
No, I definitely do. So I think in the last several years, if you kind of look at it in two angles, right? If you're selling it to any corporation at the end of the day, because this, while all of us here are here for the greater good, I'm sure there's a second half of all of these companies which is trying to see how do I build a company, how do I monetize what I have, right? So every major corporation always looks at things in two lenses. One is things that they have to do because they have compliance requirements, they have mandates, they have, if you have to do business in Europe now, you have to provide certain, you have to reduce your scope 1 and 2 emissions, etc. So there's certain things which they say, no matter how much it costs, I have to do these things, right? That's right to play. I have to do that. Then there are second things which companies always look at and say, how do I now reduce, how do I increase my profits, how do I reduce my losses, right? How does it impact my balance sheet? That's the second one. There is a third angle when it comes to sustainability, is everybody always has some priorities around what do I do for the greater good, right? So when you are going to any of these companies, you should have a clear idea of which segment are you going to be able to play, because you cannot go and solve all the problems in the world. So as a company, you have to be super clear. At the end of the day, you are still helping the company be more sustainable, the end customer. But how you make the customer sustainable could be through any of these means. It could be with helping them with their sustainability mandates. It could be helping them with their greater good. It could also be helping them become more profitable through sustainability, right? So it's nothing wrong with it. At the end of the day, you're helping them make them sustainable, right? So I think it's very important that you isolate your target market of where you want to go, right? And that way you can also help build your appropriate product, and your messaging also is suited to what you're trying to take to market.
Such an important point, to not only have your exact need that you are solving, but also how to message it to the right audience. I think that's where a lot of people start, missing a little bit. I see a great question in the chat, more about kind of design methodology more generally, but how to, given different country contexts, design to different types of users. I can imagine HCL is servicing customers all over the world. And so how do you kind of redesign based on different contexts?
Yeah, so like I said, at the core of it, so the way to kind of think of it is, if I don't know how many of you know, like Ferrero Rocher chocolate, right? That is there. It has got It's got like a chocolatey inside and then it's got a shell around it, right? That shell could be white chocolate, the shell could be dark chocolate, right? But the reason I'm giving that example is the core of it is fixed. So as a company, you need to have an anchor of what do you want your company to be, right? What is, because if you go talk to 10 people, you're going to get 10 different ideas, you're going to have 10 different problems to solve, right? But you should isolate what is my core anchor idea or problem, which is my North Star. Once you anchor on that, then when you now go to different countries, you go to different regions, you go to different industries, there's always going to be a flavor of that which is going to be different. So as a company, when I manage my portfolio, I have a global role. So we sell all our solutions across the entire world. I sell my solutions across life sciences, healthcare, manufacturing, across retail, across CPG, across utilities, across 7 or 8 different verticals, right? But I cannot have every combination of North America retail versus China manufacturing, right? But I need to have a core anchor product. Then I'll have a slightly different flavor of that, which will meet regional requirements and meet vertical requirements, because regional and vertical requirements are always going to be unique, but you have to still identify that macro thing which is common across all of these things. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to scale. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, I love that point. And what's interesting is it's not always clear, right, exactly what that core value add is. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on how to identify it properly.
Sure.
Because so easy to like end up failing in very different ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would, there is a what do you call, a philosophical aspect to it, and there's a quantitative aspect to it, because all decisions in corporations are made in a quantifiable way. So once you anchor, which is your, what is my mission, what is my vision for my company, once that is anchored, right? So now you look at what are all the options I have available, and always you have to look at that in a simple, very simple 2 by 2 matrix, right? One axis could be around what is the market opportunity and the value you're going to deliver to your customer. So higher the market opportunity, higher the value you deliver to your customer, great, right? The second axis should be whether you are the right player to do that. It's extremely important, right? So for example, I could go talk to a company, and the company could say that, look, I'm willing to spend $10 million on somebody who can actually do something related to art. Now, great, but I am nowhere close to being an artist. So even if the company spends $100 million, I am not the right person to do it. So I also need to know what my core strengths are and whether that's going to help me scale. So once you plot in a simple 2 by 2 as to which is the highest market opportunity where companies are willing to spend, where are you best at, whether you have a go-to-market strategy to be able to tap into that market, to get into that, you get a very simple 2 by 2 matrix, and that helps you decide where is the area you have to play. And of course, the first step, like I said, is you have to anchor around what your vision or mission is, and then you put this 2 by 2 against it.
Such good points, all across the board. And I do want to jump over. I see a couple of great questions. You brought up, for instance, making sure that you're aligned with your overarching mission. And by the way, I also want to say I read this article the other day that really resonated with me, which was how do you find product founder fit? So not only is it product market fit of finding the right product for a particular market, but also are you the person that has a unique ability to actually create that product, a unique ability to actually solve that problem? So I love that point. And in defining your mission, I see a great question about how do you know when you've completed that mission, right? Or is it something that kind of evolves over time?
Yeah, so one important thing, in all of these things, for any company for that matter, even if you take the largest of companies like Apple, you're never truly done, right? Because things are always going to change, right? And how you do it also is going to keep changing. And as a startup, essentially, one of the big value add any startup brings, which a large company cannot bring, is your ability to be able to pivot based on what you learn, right? So one thing which you have to always set very clear is what is my North Star towards which I'm going. That has to be anchored. Now, how you go to the North Star, you could start out on a path one, which you think is your best path. But as you go to the market, as you listen to customers, as you get more knowledge, you should be absolutely open and willing to be able to pivot in your approach. Because if you're very rigid in your approach, that's not going to help, right? So you should be able to pivot. But as long as you're pivoting and going towards the end goal, you're always on the right track. Other than that, nobody can tell or predict what the right approach is to go to anything, right? And you all see all the macro technology trends we're all seeing, right? Barnes and Amazon started as a library company moving books, then they went into selling books, and now you see where they are today. But one thing one thing Jeff Bezos was aligned on was, how do I make ordering simple for people? That was his North Star, right? And then he pivoted around it. So that's kind of, my thing is, things are always going to change. And so no path is the right path as long as you're learning and you're adjusting and pivoting based on those learnings.
Absolutely. And that brings up an interesting question that kind of connects with another question in the chat as well, which is that, you need to pivot based on learning, but then learning based on what, right? So like, what does impact measurement looks like? And also not just impact measurement more broadly for your organization, especially if you're, a small team of, let's say, 2 or 3 people. You're realistically not going to have this huge, capacity to measure every aspect of your product, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, so the main thing is, what are your metrics? So it could be 2 metrics for a sustainable company. One of it is, what is the impact or value you're delivering to your end customer? You should be able to measure that. So if you have an idea which says, I'll make you are able to reduce my carbon emissions of a customer. You go to a customer and you say that, what I have is not reducing it. The customer is not able to reduce it, right? And you see a couple of that time happening, you immediately know that either you got the problem wrong or you got the solution wrong. It's one of those 2 things, right? So that is one metric that you have to measure, is measuring the value of the impact you are creating. Number 2 is measuring the value to your bottom line. And I'll be super candid. If you are not making money or you don't have a source of funding, you are not going to exist, right? You don't have to make $1 billion in profit, but you at least need to have enough money to be able to do what you want to do. That's the second measure, right? Everybody will say, I have this problem, I want this problem to be solved. But the question is, are they willing to spend money to solve that problem? And are they willing to solve the problem now? If either of this is a no, right? You're not going to make money as a product or as a company. So you might have a greater good, but you have no finance. So I would keep those 2 as your top metrics. What value are you delivering to your customers? Are you able to measure it? Are you making money so you can survive to deliver on that value?
I love that point. I think a lot of founders are really hesitant to charge their customers for things, right? Because they're afraid that they won't be willing to pay. But at the end of the day, that really is your core metric, that if you don't have that, difficult to do anything else.
Absolutely. Unless you're funded by Warren Buffett or somebody and you're truly doing good, right? And you don't care about getting money, totally fine. Otherwise, if you're a startup, which I'm assuming a lot of companies here are looking for financing, are looking to, monetize so you can survive, it should absolutely be a true metric, and companies do understand that.
Absolutely. And so there's another great question here from Arjun in the chat about how to decide whether to focus, entirely on your small target market versus designing for something that's going to be more accessible to a broader range of people, and how to think through the trade-off between those things, designing for something that might be hyper effective for one small target market or something that might be more broadly used.
Yeah. So the short answer to that is, it's never as easy as black and white, and I'll tell you why. If you're going to go for a big market, you're going to have hundreds of varying requirements, which means you're never going to truly meet the requirements of anybody, right? When you're starting off. So it's too broad a shot to go hit it. At the same time, if you're going too narrow, then you're building a product or a technology for one person, which is also the wrong thing, right? So the way to approach this thing is, first of all, you should have, is my market, do I have a strategy for a broader market? Is my problem at a very high level going to solve a broader market problem? Is it a problem size which is big enough for me to handle? If that is a check, you at least know you have a path to scale, right? Then comes, where do I want to start, right? That is where the concept of an MVP or a minimum viable product is extremely important. Is you have to then identify within that broader circle, which is your TAM. So there's always this concept of total available market, then there's a serviceable market, and a share of the available market. Those are the 3 financial metrics you do in terms of market sizing. So you have to make sure each of those three circles have a reasonable area, right? You should have a broader market to address. Within that market, you're going to start off with one area. You cannot go solve everybody's problems. Starting off, even that has to be a reasonable sized market. So you're not building it for one customer. The worst thing that you can do as a product company, is to build product for one customer, because then you're not going to be able to scale, and it's not, you're not going to be able to make money out of it, right? So anyway, so once you so it's a combination of understanding the market and starting with a market which is sizable enough, but not too small, but also not too broad. And then you have a phased approach. Then you can scale from there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. How do you solve that core need for your target market first, and then figure out how to begin to
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody could want everything, but there's something they want today. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Find that core market of people that actually love your product first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. I do have another kind of, and I'm kind of shaping this question in my head as I say it, so we'll see how it comes out. But there's this interesting kind of debate, I think, where people, when they're thinking about sustainability, they often design and say like, well, this is a sustainable solution that people should use because it's good for the planet. So therefore, like, people will buy it, right? And then I think there's this new model that's kind of emerging from like Tesla, for instance, where they took a very different model where they said, we're going to design a product that is very sustainable, but we're just going to make it so cool and so exciting for people that people will want to buy it regardless of the sustainability aspects. But what are your thoughts about those kind of two models of designing for sustainable products?
It's a very good question, right? So like I was telling earlier, is you could fit into this category of either doing for the greater good, companies would do money, or companies would or people or companies would spend money if it's helping their bottom line, right? Or three, if it is something that's mandatory. Now Tesla, of course, is a unique situation because there's a kind of appeal to that, right? Which even if somebody is, people don't look at the monetary aspect of it. When you compare where Tesla's X series goes for $90,000, I don't think anybody is buying it because they're trying to save the planet, or because they're having a financial incentive. There's a coolness aspect to it. Now, I would, however, say that's an outlier. In the sense, I wouldn't use that as a norm, right? If you are able to do something which is absolutely cool like that, but at the end of the day is going to help your end customer either financially benefit or help save for the greater good, you hit the sweet spot. Then you're going to have, you're just going to take it off, right? But I think that's a little bit, it's good to be ambitious about it, but I think practically that's a pretty tough thing to get into, right? I mean, that's where the concept of brand building also comes, because Tesla is all about brand, so is Apple, right? So there's a little bit of brand building, which I think at a startup level is going to be extremely hard. But I think once you go do, scale, it's absolutely important. But as a startup, I would say you focus on actually delivering value to customers, because that's the only way customers are going to buy into you, whether you deliver value on their sustainability goals, or through sustainability goals, you're also helping them impact financially.
I love that point. Yeah, there's so many startups that I think get kind of distracted by the branding and the marketing side before they've actually even reached product market fit, which is, the first key step. This has been fantastic. And to that point, because so few people are going to be able to find that sweet spot where they're able to kind of do everything all at once, there's that question of trade-offs that you mentioned early on. How can you build in decision-making processes to make sure that you're considering those decisions as you're going to market and as you're trying to scale?
Absolutely. I think the number one thing is nobody likes to call their baby ugly, right? So it's extremely important that you are not emotionally attached to how you solve the problem, right? The what you want to do, you could anchor it. That's your vision. That's your passion. You can stick by it. But the how you go about solving it, there are always multiple ways. And that's where it's extremely important to have an outside-in perspective. So people who have experience saying no, right? So half of my job is to always say no. And not because I want to say no, but because I have to really critique, why is this something that we need to do, and why is it something we need to do now? And that now is also a very critical aspect of it. So I think the short answer to that is you need to have the right set of people who can advise you on it. So while it may not be the right thing now, or it may not be the way to solve it, but you don't have to sacrifice your vision and your mission statement. the approach can always be changed. So I think that's a pretty key aspect of any product development.
I love it. And as founders, many of us are extremely optimistic, so it's difficult to
And
say no,
passionate about it. Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
100%. Well, thank you so much. I realize we're going to be pushed back to the main session in about 5 seconds, but really appreciate it. Fantastic.
Thanks a lot.